Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Suckle tonight, and we are jumping on to, I guess, talk what little NBA news is going on, maybe a little FIBA, and rehash our James Harden conversation from the past couple weeks, but a little new development in the Harden situation.
Yeah, he continues to be a goofball, clown. Mike, I found this really good picture that I was going to share with you here. I'll see if I can get this. I guess the audio listeners won't care. So there's a good. I'll share it with you. It's a James Harden, and someone has put him in like Joker makeup because he's a clown. Anyways,
Nice.
yeah, James Harden was fined $100,000 today, which what's $100,000? It's just a really sad state of affairs. What's $100,000 to James Harden, Mike? Is it much? Is a hundred
It's
thousand
not
dollars
much.
worth? I
It's
think.
not. It's not much. I'm pretty sure he can probably figure that out.
Yeah. For his comments in China, um, like the bottom line is this: like, no one's gonna want to trade for him. I know he
What?
said, "Oh, I'll play in China."
He might
Like,
play in China.
it'd be like, you know, Trevor Bauer playing in Japan,
Could he
James
leave?
Harden
Could
playing
he
in
leave
China.
this year? Could he play in China this season?
I mean,
Or is
he
he
said
under
he
contract
might.
so he can't?
I he's technically under contract because he opted in.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I don't know. I mean, if I'm the Sixers, can I terminate his contract? There's probably some clauses if he's. I don't know what those all look like. I don't. The bottom line is this: the NBA's finding him shows that they are not happy, um, and it's just a bizarre situation because like Daryl Morey and him have been like linked forever, and like what's what's the purpose and what's the like I don't I'm guessing there was a handshake wink wink nudge nudge deal as has been speculated, and now that's been gone back on, which is why he's not happy. I mean, right? That has to be what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean the reality is that when they traded for him, when you trade Simmons and you bring in Harden, and then he last summer takes the whatever $13 million less than what he potentially could have, and then this year he opts in. It seems clear that at some point along the way there was some mention of, hey, you do this and we're going to do that. And it appears that that has not really taken place. And so that leaves James Harden in a situation where he calls Daryl Morey a liar. And as you said, the two of them have been pretty much joined at the hip since Daryl Morey brought James Harden to the Houston Rockets from Oklahoma City way back when. And you wonder, I mean, Daryl Morey's reputation as an NBA general manager has generally been that he is in the upper echelon of GMs. And yet it feels like this situation that we have with James Harden right now, and the fact that Morey hasn't gotten over the hump and won an NBA championship as GM, you wonder how this ultimately, and not that anybody's really worried about a GM's legacy, but this has to be a cloud kind of over Morey's that you just keep falling for this guy. And again, it doesn't make any sense to me that why, look, I guess at his peak, you could say Harden wins an MVP. Harden's a guy that in the regular season was just one of the best scorers regular season wise, probably in the history of the league during his heyday. And yet, time and time again in the playoffs, as we've said numerous times, the guy just doesn't come through. I mean, he just doesn't come through. And so at some point, that no longer becomes an anomaly. It becomes what's expected and it becomes inevitable. And I just, to me, the fact that either Brooklyn initially or the Sixers wanted this guy, knowing what his track record was. And I think teams around the league are starting to wise up that who wants this guy? I mean, what team out there wants him? I told you I'm not sure I'd want him on the minimum. Now, that's probably not true, but the reality is that I don't want this guy to be a main part of my team because I know in big moments that part of my team is going to disappear. And so who's going to pay this guy next summer? Nobody. Maybe it's the Chinese. Maybe it is.
Yeah. So just to further discuss this, the National Basketball Players Association is filing a grievance disputing the $100,000 fine, claiming that this is their statement. We respect. This was posted at 7:30, so I don't know if you even know this. So
I see this. I see it. I have it in
we
front of me right now.
respectfully disagree with the league's decision to discipline James Harden for recent comments he made, which we believe do not violate the rule against public trade demands. We intend to file a grievance and have the matter heard by our arbitrator. The league stated that he was fined for indicating that he would not perform the services called for under his player contract unless traded to another team. As a refresher, Mike is going to perform the comments that James Harden did from last. If you scroll down in the article, Mike, it's a little.
I have it. I have it right in front of me.
So he did a dramatic reading last week. He's going to do it again, and then we can discuss whether this violates the NBA's policy. Go ahead, Mike.
Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of.
I mean, so here's what I'm going to say. Unless their argument is going to be he's calling for Daryl Morey to be fired. I mean,
which I guess he has a right to do. Doesn't mean Philly has to listen to him.
So what that means to me is that what happens if they don't fire Daryl Morey, then you are theoretically requesting a trade, right? I mean, or you're just saying you're not going to play. So
that's a lot of semantics there. That's a lot of semantics. I guess. I mean, $100,000 in the NBA is like,
well, that's the maximum. That's the maximum they're allowed to fine him.
But that's like a kangaroo court. It's like fining him a dime. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, who wins the does the NBA PA have a leg to stand on all of this or not?
I mean, I think they do. I mean, I read the statement and look, it's a stupid statement, and I don't know. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with the stupidity that Harden has demonstrated over the last 3 years since he's left Houston. But I'm not sure that I could look at this and really say that it's a trade demand. I mean, you can read between the lines and you can do whatever, and you can understand why the NBA is not happy with the statement. But I'm not sure that when I read that I completely and 100% interpret that as a trade demand, because I don't hear the word trade in there anywhere. And granted, you're saying you're not going to be a part of an organization that Daryl Morey is with, which clearly is the Philadelphia 76ers right now. So I guess if you're saying you're not going to play for the Sixers, then you're asking to be playing for another franchise. So I guess in between the lines, there's a trade demand there. But I would guess that if James Harden and the NBA PA can find a pretty good lawyer, that they'd be able to poke holes in that. Yeah. Maybe the fine gets reduced. I don't know. I mean, because he clearly doesn't state explicitly trade me, it seems like there's at least some legal gray area there that somebody could poke and prod at and see if they couldn't get the fine reduced or removed. That's the way I would look at it.
Okay. All right.
Of course, I'm not a lawyer. I only play one on TV. So,
yeah. All right, Mike. So, I guess the only other thing we really have to talk about is FIBA. Is there anything else you want to say on Harden?
Where does he play this season? Where does he play this season?
I think he ends up being a 76er. I don't think this is going to.
Does he finish the season as a 76er? I think he starts the season as a 76er. Does he finish the season as a 76er?
I think, I feel like, Mike, I don't know. I'm assuming you listened to Simmons today.
I did.
I feel like Simmons made the point that, and I don't think it was Simmons. I think it was one of his guests, maybe Jacoby, had said, listen, if Harden really wants to get paid, he needs to just shut his mouth and play this year, and then he'll get money. But if he doesn't, then he's going to have a Russell Westbrook contract, essentially. That's kind of what they were talking about, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would
But I don't know if
say
is Harden
that's
smart enough to do that. That's the question,
correct.
right?
That's correct. That's true. That's true. That statement is correct. However, your statement of is Harden smart enough to realize that, I'm not sure that his track record over the last 3 years would say that he is. Now, I know that Harden doesn't have an agent and he has represented himself and I think hired like guys one off to help in negotiations. And so he hasn't been the picture of stability when it comes to making good decisions. So the odds to me of him looking around at the landscape and saying, man, I'm going to go back to Philly and just play my tail off and be the best version of James Harden that I can be. And then next summer I'll have a chance to cash in. I would say the odds of that are pretty low. And so then it still comes down to, for me, if you're another team, what kind of team wants James Harden? Because if you're a championship contending team, that means that you need guys who are going to play well in big moments in the playoffs. James Harden has proven that that is not what James Harden does. So to me, any championship contending team, why would you offer anything for James Harden in a trade? And why would you want to pay him any significant amount of salary? So eliminate those teams. Then you're talking about teams who are middle of the pack. Does James Harden sell tickets in your building? Do people love watching James Harden? I don't hear a lot of people saying, man, I just love watching James Harden pound the rock and then shoot step back threes. I don't really hear that from anyone that I know. So if you're a middle of the road team, doesn't make any sense. And if you're a young team, an up and coming team, you clearly have players who you want to have be involved in the offense. And look, I know Harden led the league in assists last year, so the guy clearly can pass, but he's a ball dominant player. And if you have a young team, you don't want to bring that kind of guy in. I just don't see any particular archetype of team that is going to want James Harden, and especially not want James Harden at the salary that he's going to believe he
You know
can
what I think would be
demand.
fun, Mike?
What?
Get him to the Lakers somehow and just see how LeBron
Oh my God.
passively aggressively attacks him.
That would not take very long. Maybe the Wizards. I could see the Wizards taking a flyer on James Harden. That seems like a franchise that would somehow talk themselves into.
Oh my God! Could you imagine Simmons and House's podcast? Oh please.
Nah, I think the
NBA
Wizards
guy.
are back. I think the Wizards are back on the right track. I don't even think the Wizards would take him at this point. So who knows?
All right.
Maybe he's in China next year.
Yeah. All right. Let's turn our attention briefly because I don't know how much we have to say about FIBA. Once again, I have not watched a single minute of FIBA basketball, and I know these are all scrimmages, and it officially starts on Saturday, the 26th. Like that's the first like official game. The Team USA before we record next week will have played two of their games. The games being the New Zealand game and the Greece game, and in both of those games, you would think they should take care of business, especially since Giannis is not playing. I listen. They've won all their games now. They were trailing most of the game against Germany, from what I understand, and then Anthony Edwards had a great game. With the let's see what is his back? What was his stats, Mike? Do you know? I'm trying to pull it up. But
He had 34. I know he had 34 points. I'm not sure what the rest of his stat line looked like.
The box score is not. Oh, here we go. Anthony Edwards had 34 points, 11 of 21 from the field, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. His plus minus was plus 37, Mike. Sheesh. That's crazy.
That's good. That's solid.
It's crazy good. Anyways, listen, this team is there's another one that really excites. I mean, Anthony Edwards is probably the most exciting player on the roster, right? Like if you were drafting this team, Mike, and I don't really want to spend a long time with this discussion, okay? If we were drafting this team, he would be the number one pick, right?
Well, all right. Here's how I want to phrase it: as if you were starting a franchise, what order would you go in terms of guys? So let's say this is the expansion draft, and these are the guys who are available to start your franchise with.
You're gonna laugh at my number 3, but
That's your number 3. Okay. Well, clearly, I think to me, I don't think there's any debate that Edwards is number 1. Correct.
Number 2. Correct. Number 2 is probably Paulo, even though he's not getting a lot of minutes.
I don't know. I would take. To me, it's Halliburton.
Okay.
And here's why. I think Halliburton, when you look at what he did last year with Indiana, and you look at the way he plays. Now, I'm not sure that Tyrese Halliburton is going to be the best player on a championship
Mike,
team.
No. The answer is no, because what's his ceiling?
His ceiling is a really good. His ceiling is a really good number 2. His ceiling is a really good number 2.
That's what I'm saying. Like top 20 player in the NBA, 25. What's his ceiling, Mike?
Oh, his ceiling, I think, is higher than that. I think his ceiling's top 15.
I don't think so. I think he's top 20, top 25. Listen, I respect that he had a great season in Indiana last year, but like, I mean,
I think he's a guy that anybody
you can sell me on it, Mike.
Anybody can play with him. I think to me that's the key, is that he's a guy who, because of his size and because of his unselfishness and his high IQ, I feel like he's a guy in the backcourt who you could put lots of different guys next to him that could succeed. I think in certain instances, if he needs to score, he's a guy who can score. I think if you need him to be a playmaker, he's a guy who can be a playmaker. He's long. He's a good defender. I think there's a lot of things about him that lead me to believe that, again, I think his ceiling to me is a really, really, really high level number 2. I don't think he's ever a 1.
Paulo at 3.
That's a good one. I mean,
because I have Austin Reeves at 3.
All right, so okay. I don't think Austin Reeves is 3. I think I would probably put Paulo at 3, although I think there's also a case to be made for Jaren Jackson at 3.
He's too injury prone. I can't deal with it.
Injury prone, fouls. There's definitely things. There's definitely red flags when it comes to Jaren Jackson, but he's also, I think he's only like 23 years old at this point, even though it feels like he's been around forever. And he feels like a guy who sort of fits the modern game, right? He's a big who can shoot it, step out on the floor a little bit. Obviously, tremendous defender and shot blocker. Is he ever a number 1 on a championship team? I would say no, because, again, he's not going to be that type of offensive player, whereas Paulo could be. So I understand where you're coming from. I guess, given the choice, if I was going to start a franchise, I think I'd probably go your way and lean towards Paulo, only because of the potential upside.
I mean,
I think he's probably higher.
Is he 19 or is he 20? Like,
Paulo's 20? Yeah. I mean, at this point, he might be 20, but he's young. Let's put it that way.
Poor Walker Kessler's not even seeing the floor, man. Poor guy.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if there's any matchups against any of the teams that they play where there's a need for a little bit bigger guy with a little bit more bulk. There may be, there may not be. Who knows? Look, again, he's coming off his second year. So is it all that surprising? I mean, there's always guys on these teams that end up not playing very much. Kessler's not going to play very much. It feels like Josh Hart hasn't gotten many minutes in these
How is
exhibition
Bobby
games.
Portis even playing any minutes? Come on now. This is
Bobby Portis, he was number 5 on my list, man.
oh, get out of here.
No? All right. So we have Edwards in no particular order, right? We agree Edwards is 1. And then after that, we're going Paolo, Halliburton is the next tier, one of those two guys.
Yeah, I would think so. I think it's one of those two guys.
Okay. So then where do you put the guys who are established, I guess, as they're kind of borderline all-stars, right? You're talking about Brunson, Ingram, and Bridges as the next tier.
Well, and Jaren Jackson Jr. would probably be in that group.
Yeah, right? And Reeves is probably in that tier too. Although if you look at sheer production in the league, he's probably below that tier. I mean, clearly in the league to this point, Ingram, Brunson, Bridges, those guys have all accomplished more in the league at this point than Austin Reeves has.
Yeah, I think listen, I would rather have Reeves than Brunson for sure. I don't know, something about
even after Brunson destroyed the Cavs.
I don't know.
I feel exactly the same as you do, honestly.
I think I would take of the guards after Anthony Edwards. I think Reeves is my next guard. Okay, like, right? I mean,
well,
Halliburton's a guard too.
Halliburton's better.
After those two, I definitely think Reeves is the next guard. Like, I would take Reeves.
So you're taking Reeves ahead of Bridges. You're taking him ahead of
Brunson
for
sure.
See, here's the thing.
I think Reeves and Jaren Jackson Jr. is probably the next tier, and then I would go Bridges, Ingram, Brunson in the fourth tier, if we want to say.
I mean, you're talking Brandon Ingram when he's healthy. That dude's putting up like 25, 26, 27 a game when he's healthy.
When he's healthy. He's actually played terrible in this, right?
He hasn't been that good in this. He has not been that good in this competition.
I mean, the last game, 15 minutes, 1 of 6 from the field, 1 of 3 from behind the arc. Scoring 3 points in 15 minutes. I mean, I don't know. I know this is a sample size of guys who don't play together regularly. That, I mean, not that really should matter. You've got 12 NBA players on your team. I mean, you should be able to figure it out, in my opinion. You should be able to run a motion offense and figure it out, right? Like, theoretically, like you would think.
You would think.
I don't know. I mean, but he's been pretty bad. I think that Zion stinks rubbing off on him a little bit.
You could be correct. You could be correct on that. Let me ask you about Brunson. What do you feel like is the ceiling for a Knicks team if Brunson is their best player? Can they advance past the second round?
Eastern Conference Finals is probably where I would say. I don't think they can get any further than that, and that might even be. They might have reached their ceiling this year. Like, if he's their best player,
that's kind of what I think. Second round. I mean, I think Brunson. Look, he destroyed the Cavs. I told you during that series, and I think I said it on the podcast, that it felt like every time he went to do something offensively that he was just able to get what he wanted and make shots. But I also know that at the other end of the floor that he's somewhat of a liability. And even though he's tough and even though he's savvy and has a high IQ, I just think, and we've talked about it in regards to the Cavs, right, with the small backcourt, I just think you can maybe get away with one of these guys. And maybe if you find the right two guard to put next to Brunson that has size and can play defense, that maybe you can do enough to be able to hide him if the rest of your roster is good enough. But you look at teams that win championships, and what happens is those guys who have been semi-liabilities end up improving and getting better and getting to the point where they're at least average on the defensive end of the floor. Like, I look at Denver, right? Yeah. I mean, I think you would look at Denver's team and say that none of those guys, Jokic, Murray, Michael Porter Jr., none of those guys came into the league or started their careers in the league with a stellar reputation as defenders. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. was abjectly lost on that end of the floor, and Malone refused to play him in his rookie year, basically because he couldn't defend. And I think Murray was probably a little bit better than Porter, but he was also a guy that was not looked upon as being a great defender. And then clearly a lot of people have questions about how good of a defender Jokic is. And yet I think all of those guys during this championship season were able to figure it out enough positionally, intelligence-wise, effort, whatever it is, that they became at least average defenders. And as good as they are offensively, that was enough to carry them to a championship. So I think if you're looking at Brunson, I think he's always going to have a tough time on the defensive end of the floor because of his size. And so you'd have to put together kind of the perfect team around him. So I think when you look at the Knicks, what they have right now, to me, I don't see that as being a roster that's going to get out of the second round and get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think they're tapped out. But again, you could find the right guy next to him and maybe you could raise that ceiling. But I just have concerns with any little guards that are a liability on defense. Yeah. That formula doesn't work too well.
I agree, Mike. Listen, I know what they did to the Cavs in the postseason, but I have a feeling if the Cavs and the Knicks were to match up again in the postseason, the Cavs would have their number. I think I have faith, Mike. I don't know why I have faith, but
I'm glad you have faith. That playoff series shook me a little bit, I have to say. I did not see what happened in terms of the performance of the team as a whole and the performance of the individual players. I did not see that coming in the least. I mean, not to say that I went into it 100% feeling like the Cavs have got this locked up and it's going to be super easy, but I certainly felt like they would take care of business both individually and as a team. And clearly nobody from the Cavs played well in that series. So, and kudos to Brunson. He got it done in that series. Didn't get it done against Miami, unfortunately, for him.
So I guess what we're really saying is that are there any players on this team that we would want to have? I mean, Anthony Edwards is probably the only one that I would say has a chance to be the best player on a championship team.
I think so. And I think that's far from a guarantee.
I said he's the closest. I didn't say he
was.
That's
what I'm saying. I think he's the closest. I think he's the guy you would clearly pick. But if
we opened all the NBA rosters, and I don't want to do this, Mike. We're not doing this right now. But if we were to open all the NBA rosters and say pick like players who you would want to lead, like give you a chance to win the championship, you can pick one player. Like, how far into the draft does Anthony Edwards go? Like,
I think he goes in the top 10 probably, but just because of his age.
Yeah.
And his potential. So he's a guy who, I guess, from my standpoint, and when you look at guys who historically have been the best guy on a championship team, Edwards, I think, is going to get there as far as being able to score in multiple ways because he's just so strong and so athletic and he can shoot it. And typically guys' shots continue to get better throughout their career if they're working at it. And I think Edwards, from a scoring standpoint, he's going to be everything that you would want in a number one scoring option. I think the question that I have with Edwards is, does he make other guys better? Can he make other guys better? If he's in a more hospitable situation when it comes to winning, can he make other guys better? Can he be the playmaker when he's the number one guy with the ball in his hands all the time? And I think the answer to that is probably yes, although it's come in fits and starts to this point. I think it's probably in there, but I don't think it's a guarantee. I don't think he has the LeBron gene where it's just like, hey, I can make every pass and I know where everybody is on the floor. Like, I don't see Anthony Edwards as that type of player. I see him leaning more towards scoring. And then the other thing that's a huge positive for him as far as being a franchise player is I think he can get it done on both ends. I mean, he's been inconsistent as a young guy in the league, but with his physical tools, and you'll see it sometimes with Minnesota, and I think from what I've read, you've seen it in this FIBA team, that he can turn it up defensively. And so when you have a guy who's a two-way player, that gives you a much better chance, obviously, of that guy turning into a number one option on a championship team, being the best player on a championship team. So I don't think you get through the top 10 only because of his age, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say top 10 to top 15 was going to be where I was. I mean, we're splitting hairs at this point.
Well, it depends again on how much do you value the next 3 years versus how much do you value the next 10. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Let's have a little teaser for next week, Mike. Let's one of our
Let's
topics
do that.
next week, unless things get blown up, like and
all
things
right,
happen.
I like it. That's a good topic.
So
that's a good topic.
We're gonna come with a list of players in the NBA that are American. Are we going to pick American, or are we going to pick any NBA players?
No, we'll pick anybody. We'll go anybody.
Okay, pick any NBA players. And if you come and Zion's on your list, Mike, I'm going to throw my computer out the window, because I don't think you can do that. I can't think you can pick Zion when he's the number of games he's missed. But I'm going to let you do what you want to do. But I'm going to be very disappointed if Zion's on your list, Mike. That's
all right.
Teaser. Well, next week, one of the topics will be, what players would you choose before Anthony Edwards? And we're not going to say they have to be under a certain age. We're not going to say any of that. Just what players do we want to say? I guess
use whatever criteria you want. It's free reign. Use whatever criteria you want to use, because your definition of what it might be different from mine, and that could make for some interesting discussion.
Okay, sounds good. So what players in the NBA would you choose before Anthony Edwards?
I like it. It's a good topic. All right. Which guy on this roster would be the last guy you'd want to start a franchise with?
Bobby Portis.
Well, let's put this way. I think they're
what's his name? What was the guy's name? Nikola Mirotic, right?
Mirotic, yeah. Mirotic, after he slugged Mirotic when he was with the Bulls.
Yeah.
So you don't want Portis not only for his play on the floor, but
Bobby Portis was probably like Tim Anderson.
Hey, you might be right. He also needs some crazy eyes. If you need crazy eyes, though, Portis got you covered.
I mean, I think Bobby Portis is the last one I take, right? I mean,
I think it's Portis or Josh Hart probably, who are, I would say, as far as their NBA careers, they are similar players in that they are.
But I give
role players, but pretty high level, high level role players.
I give Josh Hart a lot of credit. You know, in that series against us, we let him help beat him with a sprained ankle. So represent Josh Hart.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of those guys are on the same level. I mean, they're both good role players. They're probably, if they're starting for your team, you're probably looking for somebody to replace them. But if they're your 6th, 7th, 8th guy, you're feeling pretty good about your depth, because I think both of those guys are good quality veteran bench players that you want as part of your team. But I don't think they're guys that you're building a franchise around. Let's put it that way.
All right.
There's only one guy we haven't talked about on this whole team. Any Cam Johnson thoughts? I'm taking that as a no.
He's on Brooklyn now, right?
Yeah, he's on Brooklyn.
He was part of the Durant trade.
Correct. Yeah, correct. I mean, Cam Johnson, again, good player, probably a slightly above average starter because of his shooting ability, but not a guy that you're going to build your franchise around. A good guy to have a nice piece, definitely a nice piece that Brooklyn was able to pull out of Phoenix when they traded Durant there, but not a guy that you're going to build a franchise around. So, hey, we've hit on every guy on the roster now. So,
all right. One last thing, Mike. I want your reaction. The schedule did get released. That's the other thing. Did you see the Christmas Day games? Did you see them?
I did, but I don't think I memorized them. Isn't it who the Knicks are playing in the first game? Who are the Knicks playing?
Bucks in the first game.
Yeah. Yeah,
Golden State, Denver. Golden State, Denver. I could get behind that game. Too bad it's at
that's a good
2:30
game.
and I'll never watch it.
That's a good game.
Boston, Lakers.
Look, I don't particularly obviously love the Celtics and Lakers. I could take it or leave it, but traditionally that's obviously a game that has a
Unfortunately,
lot of
once again,
meaning in
that
the
game's
league.
at 5. That game's at 5 p.m., so I'm out on that one.
Yeah, that's one I'll probably, depending on what my status is, I probably watch some of that.
Sixers, Heat.
I mean, I'm not super interested in that game.
And then Dallas, Phoenix. I'll probably watch that one. But
There's some bad blood there, so that's a good one. The Booker,
is
Luka.
this like the worst Christmas lineup that in recent years, like recent memory? Like, I would have much rather had like Boston, Milwaukee, the Knicks in Milwaukee. Come on, and I get
Yeah,
Boston.
I don't sense a big rivalry between the Knicks and Milwaukee.
Like, what about doing like, I mean, I think Cavs Knicks would have been intriguing, like way more intriguing than Milwaukee the Knicks. I mean,
Here's a question for you. So you want Milwaukee in there, right? Because of Giannis, and they won the title 2 years ago. But who would you in the whole league? Who would you most want to see Milwaukee playing against? Like, who do you feel like is Milwaukee's rival? Does any team come to mind?
I would probably put the Celtics there, right?
Yeah, that's what I would say probably too. But I don't know that.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the Cavs' record against Milwaukee over the last 3 years is probably one of the best in the league, honestly.
Cavs Milwaukee would be an interesting matchup. Obviously, we're biased, but you have third year Evan Mobley.
Milwaukee. I mean, Sixers Milwaukee's more intriguing than. I mean, maybe not without Harden there, but I think Sixers Milwaukee's a pretty. There was that game this year. Then Sixers hit like 27 threes against them.
Yeah, let's just put it.
Was that last Christmas? That might have been last Christmas.
That was, I believe it was.
So maybe that's why they didn't want to do that game. But like, I don't know. It just to me like you do have 5 Eastern Conference and 5 Western Conference teams, and like I don't want to get into the weeds too much here. I just wanted your initial reactions, but like,
I mean, the question is, right? What teams would you not want to? I mean, I think the team we would probably least like to see of the teams that are in there is I have no need to see the Knicks on Christmas Day, right?
Well, yeah, but New York's the biggest market. So
right, I get it. I mean, we understand why they're in there, but I don't necessarily have a big need to see the Knicks. Okay, but let's just look quickly. Is there any team in the Eastern Conference? Really, the only team that you would say you would replace the Knicks with is the Cavs, right? I mean, nobody else. You're not replacing them with Brooklyn. Trae Young doesn't draw anybody. The Bulls are terrible. The Raptors are terrible. And then you're down into the bottom of the conference. So really in the East, the only team you can make a case for is the Cavs replacing the Knicks, which from a TV market standpoint and from the NBA's perspective doesn't make any sense. And then you go out West and you're like, okay, who would you want to see in there and who would you take out? I mean, I don't know. Like Memphis, Ja's out, so that's a huge draw for the Grizzlies. Well, he'll be back by then, probably, right? 25 games.
25 games? It's 25 games. There's no way they're going to have to play 25 games by Christmas Day.
Yeah, right? I guess you're right. Will it be close? They start not at the end of October, so you got basically all of November, December. They'll probably be right around the 25 game mark, right? Because they probably play somewhere between.
I don't know, when he's suspended 25 games, is he allowed to practice with the team, or is he not allowed to even be around the team?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I guess if you're looking at it, you're not going to replace him with Memphis. I mean, clearly, I don't think you're taking out any of the teams that are in there to put Memphis in there. You're not putting Sacramento in on Christmas.
The Grizzlies' 25th game is on December 21st.
Okay, so he theoretically could have been back for a Christmas Day game, but whatever.
His first game's probably going to be against Zion.
There you go. Or Zion in street clothes, right? One of the two.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm going with the two.
Sacramento's not getting a Christmas Day game. The Clippers, who knows? Clearly, you have no idea who's going to be playing for them, so it doesn't matter. Minnesota, look, then you're into the young teams, right? Or the teams that are up and coming or that don't have really a pedigree. So Minnesota, Oklahoma City, those teams would be interesting to see, but nobody's clamoring to see those teams in place of any of the teams that are playing on Christmas Day. So, I mean, you could argue they got the teams right. As you said, I'm not sure that the matchups that they selected are the most interesting matchups. You might have matched them up differently. Like I feel like Philly usually plays New York on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And then you had Boston and Milwaukee. To me, those are two better matchups than the ones that they chose. But again, it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know, Mike. Sorry, I just thought of that topic as we were.
I like it.
Here, so.
All right. Well, we'll see as we get closer to Christmas. Who knows what the records will look like, and we'll, I'm sure, revisit that topic as we get closer to December, which is going to be here before we know it, and so is the season. So, anyway, let's leave it there. The next time we talk, Team USA will have 2 games under their belt. I'm going to at least hope to watch a little bit of the game on Saturday morning, and we will see how that goes. I anticipate that these first 3 games that they should win pretty easily, and then once they get into the medal round, I would think they're going to be challenged. I mean, this isn't a team that's like the dream team that's going to win every game by 40 points. I think they're going to have to work, and they're going to be challenged, and I expect them to win the gold medal, but I don't think it's going to be super easy. So it should be an entertaining watch if we can figure out how to watch those games. I know they're on ESPN2, but figure out not from a standpoint of where do you find them, but just squeezing them into our already busy lives. So anyway, anything else?
Why wasn't this played in like the beginning of August?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting of the timing. Who knows? I have no idea. It's also interesting that they're playing it a year before the Olympics. And I forget, I don't know if I was listening to something or reading something where they were explaining the logic of why they wanted to move it closer so that it was only a year away from the Olympics. But to me, I like when you split it up and it's halfway in between. Again, who really cares is the honest truth about it's more interesting from a standpoint of watching Team USA and the dynamics of the individual players and how that's going to impact them going back into the league. Then it, not that I don't want to support Team USA and hope they win the gold medal, because I certainly do, but it's also, I think it's interesting from an NBA fan's perspective just to look at the impact on the players. And you look back at the history of Team USA since the Dream Team and just how the Team USA experience has helped guys to grow and sort of take that leap. And maybe Edwards is the next guy. We'll have to wait and see.
All right.
Let's leave it there. Soon we'll be back with some Cleveland Browns talk here at the end. What's that?
I said, hopefully you have some news or something.
Something. We got to have something's got to go on in the NBA. There has to be something, because I can only talk about how bad James Harden is for.
Listen, okay, and that's podcasts. The other thing, Mike. That's the other declaration for next week's podcast.
No Harden.
We're not going to discuss Harden at all.
No Harden talk unless he gets traded to the Cavs.
Okay, I can agree with that.
All right, let's leave it there. Thanks to everyone for listening tonight. We really appreciate it, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.